right, for lecture 2, I forgot to mention one other thing about lecture number 1 there. The term is dendritic arborization. And actually what I'd like you to do is, this is picture number 2 here. These are pictures of neurons in the cerebellum. And take a look at the difference in these pictures. Look at A compared to F. A is a very limited type of neuron. It doesn't have very much of any dendritic growth on it. If you look at F, it almost looks like a tree, doesn't it? And so the word for tree is arborization. And so some neuroanatomists came up with the term of dendritic arborization. So for a speed skater who's very good at all these motoric functions, we'd see a lot of dendritic arborization in the cerebellum. You can do so many different things because these dendrites branch out and give you a lot of behavioral plasticity. So the term is called dendritic arborization. Now let's talk a little bit about disease states. In your book, page 272, it's got box 8.1273, myasthenia gravis. It's a disease state that affects some people. They have problems with droopy eyelids and other things. I'd like you to go to the website and find 3 pieces of information, put them in on your outline for information and treatments there. We find that myasthenia gravis actually affects the picture right below it, the neuromuscular junction. We see a deterioration between the motor neuron and the muscle. If you look at that picture there, it shows the synapse innervating the muscle, and we see a real loss of acetylcholine and a deterioration of that junction right there. So the typical treatment for myasthenia gravis is to actually try to increase acetylcholine levels. And the way they often do that is very unique. I have to share a little story, and you'll want to write this in your detailed outline. The normal way that acetylcholine works, it binds at the receptor, and in order to inactivate acetylcholine, usually an enzyme comes in. And the name of the enzyme is, of course, acetylcholinesterase. Anything that ends with an ASE is an ACE. That normally destroys acetylcholine. So the medication they give for myasthenia gravis is called physostigmine. And physostigmine basically acts to block the enzyme. So it blocks acetylcholinesterase, and by blocking an enzyme that destroys acetylcholine, it's actually classified as an acetylcholine agonist, and that's kind of the main treatment for myasthenia gravis. Next, and we're going to spend a fair amount of time on this one, Parkinson's disease. We're going to spend a fair amount of time. My father, unfortunately, has advanced stage Parkinson's disease right now. Very difficult to watch him go through this as he loses his cognitive function as well. So what I'd like you to do is go to these first couple of websites and just try to find a few facts about him. The first one is the National Institute of Neurological Diseases. Do a little search for Parkinson's disease and see if you can find one clinical trial there, phase 3, and just describe what they're doing, what the independent and dependent variables are, so a little maybe brief summary. Then I want you to go to the Parkinson's disease website and just look up maybe 3 pieces of information there. And then, of course, Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future guy, who was a big star a long time ago. He's got advanced stage Parkinson's disease. See if you can find some facts about that as well. The symptoms of Parkinson's disease is on number 4. And if you want to put that into your outline, we have resting tremor. It's often called a pill rolling tremor, where you actually just see the fingers roll around. We have a rigidity that happens later. Bradykinesia, or a slowness of movement, and postural instability. It's hard for them to stand up and keep their balance. That gets worse and worse, and they have a lot of potential falls. Neuroanatomically, it seems the biggest problem with Parkinson's disease is in the substantia nigra, and there's a pathway called the nigrostriatal pathway, and we see a huge loss of the neurotransmitter dopamine. So the loss of dopamine is really big here, and so this leads to some treatment ideas. And as some of you identified on the discussion board, dopamine agonists tend to be the key. One of the products used is called L-Dopa. It's part of Sinemet. And the idea is L-Dopa you take. You wouldn't want to take dopamine because that won't get through the blood-brain barrier. But L-Dopa will be taken up by neurons, and it'll help with the synthesis of dopamine. So it helps on the synthesis side of things. Another drug that some of you identified, Requip. Requip seems to help dopamine by helping it bind better postsynaptically, and these are both working in the substantia nigra. So that's the main treatment for Parkinson's disease. At the very start, they also give products that... So anticholinergics are also given, which seems a little weird, but they actually work at the muscle level, and by blocking things at the muscle level, they seem to help out, especially early on. So anticholinergics early on for the tremor. They only help with the tremor very early on. Other products that some of you mentioned, MAO-B inhibitors. So let me share a little bit on that. MAO inhibitors. Serotonin, you may want to write this down. Serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. They're all considered monoamines. And originally, one thing we know is that those monoamines, after they bind, one of the ways they are inactivated is by monoamine oxidases. So oxidases are enzymes. One of the first treatments available out there for depression were drugs that blocked monoamine oxidases. So kind of the same thing as the physostigmine. You give a drug that blocks the MAOs. You give a drug that blocks the MAO enzyme. Thus you increase the level of these neurotransmitters. So MAO inhibitors would actually be agonists for serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. When they were first used for depression, they were useful, but there were tons of side effects. You couldn't eat cheese, you couldn't have wine, and all sorts of other things because they had so many side effects. I think the MAO inhibitors for Parkinson's are a little more specific, and they help out dopamine and don't cause all the side effects. So those are the things that are commonly used. Let's see. Let's go to other treatments as well. I got a few abstracts through there. Deep brain stimulation. Some of you... that's a current treatment that is used. Let's see, did I put anything on that one? I did not, but that one is actually used. Yoga. I put an abstract there with yoga. You can read through that and say a little bit about that if you want. Yoga is used. See if you can find a little bit on deep brain stimulation as well. You guys were correct on the stem cell idea. Because Parkinson's disease is specific to the nigrostriatal pathway, they've actually done some stem cell work there. And then the final one that I have an abstract for, and my dad was actually put on this, was a pump. A pump where it actually sends the dopamine directly to the right spot into the brain. The problem is when you ingest L-Dopa or Sinemet, it loses a lot when it goes through the bloodstream and the intestine. The other product in there, carbidopa, actually helps stop that breakdown, but the pump actually goes directly into the brain, and my dad's actually on it now, and it's really actually helped him out a great deal. It's going to give him more functionality as time goes on and cut down on the falls and so forth. So hopefully this makes sense for the Parkinson's disease situation. See if you can type up a good detailed outline. You can certainly use some of the information after the agenda and plug it in. Just make sure you give me some good summaries of this key information. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.